So, what we learned in school about human evolution has determined to be wrong. Okay? It looks like the reason how humans evolved and why we look different is because there were some ancestors of us that hybridized with different archaic humans that were found in different regions. This is David Reich, a geneticist, and he was asked, why is there no Neanderthals around today?
If you want to make a strong argument, you might argue that non-Africans today are Neanderthals who just have waves and waves of modern humans from Africa mixing with them. Like who are the ancestors? So that might sound like a silly kind of philosophical statement, but like genealogically, I don't know if this happened before or after my books. You probably don't know about this, but there was a super interesting series of papers that came out which made it clear, many things became clear, but one of them was that actually the proportion of non-Africans ancestors who are Neanderthals is not 2%, which is the proportion of their DNA in our in our genomes today. If you're a non-African person, it's more like 10 or 20% of your ancestors are Neanderthals. And what actually happened was when Neanderthals and modern humans met and mixed, the Neanderthal DNA was not as biologically fit. And the reason was that Neanderthals had lived in small populations for about 500,000 years since separating from modern humans, which had lived in larger populations, and had accumulated a large number, thousands of slightly bad mutations, such that in the mixed populations, there was selection to remove the Neanderthal ancestry. And that would have happened very, very rapidly after the mixture process. And there's now overwhelming evidence that that must have happened. And so if you actually look at the ancestors, if you count of your ancestors, if you're of non-African descent, how many of them were Neanderthals, say, 70,000 years ago, it's not going to be 2%, it's going to be 10 or 20%, which is a lot. And maybe the right way to think about this is that you have a population in the Near East, for example, that is just encountering waves and waves of modern humans mixing. There's so many of them that over time it stays Neanderthal, stays local, but it just becomes over time more and more modern human, and eventually it gets taken over from the inside by modern human ancestry.
Let's break down what he just said. Because human DNA basically overwrites Neanderthal DNA, we have more Neanderthal ancestors than what is shown in our current DNA samples. And it is this DNA that makes Europeans unique from the other races of the world. Example, we got our hair, we got our skin tones, our facial structure, and something to do with our brain. All from Neanderthal. In fact, we're so similar. Look what happens when this student asks a question of this researcher or professor in this field.
Hi, I was here last week during the Johansson lecture, and I asked him a question about what exactly made us different from Neanderthals, and he actually told me to come and ask you. So, so as I was listening to your lecture, there were two things that I thought were, going to make it different, but it didn't. First was the genetic information, and I think the data set is still too small to jump to a conclusion. And then second, second is the skull that you showed us, and you said that it showed that it was clearly different from modern humans. That was the Laferisi skull, I believe.
Laferisi,
but
yes.
When you look at a different Neanderthal skull, like Shanidar, for example, that one looks just like a modern human. It's not as extreme as the one as you showed us. So I don't know, could you put me to rest and tell me exactly what makes us different from Neanderthals?
Probably not. Neanderthals, like humans, have variance in almost any morphological characteristic that one could measure. And there's a field of called geometrical morphometrics, where you measure gazillion different things in a skull, like the difference between these 2 points and these 2 points, and how wide the nose is, and the distance between the eyes and the nose, and just a gazillion different things. And then you find which of these differences are most characteristic of humans versus what we would call Neanderthals. And in these multi-dimensional plots, you can draw a line between humans and Neanderthals. So a precise answer to your question, what makes humans different than Neanderthals, would be some separating hyperplane in this multi-dimensional space of morphological characteristics. But that's not something that that you can really take home, or
Basically, what he's saying is no. There's no real difference between Neanderthals and humans. They were just a separate race. But they don't like calling them human because of the implications and what that means to the existing narrative. They were just like us. They used fire, wore clothes, built houses, made art. The houses that they built, that we have evidence of at least, were out of mammoth bones. And even though they were a lot like superhumans compared to us, I don't think they were out 1v1ing mammoths. So it would require a lot of complex strategy and teamwork. In fact, there is a cave that was found that has thousands of Neanderthal remains that were found to have been living with each other in large groups and even burying their dead and placing flowers on their graves. But this narrative that everyone came out of Africa 50,000 years ago and people just look different because of the environment they adapted to has been shattered by this DNA evidence. In fact, it's been shattered so bad that it's putting it into question the idea that we came out of Africa at all. What is now more likely is that humans went into Africa and bred with the different species there. But we have more on that later. Basically, you can look at the world not that long ago, like a little bit farther back than when the pyramids were built, and see a bunch of very distinct different races. I mean, like races like in World of Warcraft or Lord of the Rings, there was hobbits and giants and dwarfs and elf-like creatures maybe, and they were all very distinct. But over time, we've kind of all bred together to create a more modernized version of each of those races. Now let's talk about why they say East Asians have more Neanderthal DNA than Europeans. While it's true in some sense, it's a word game they're playing. What they have is Denisovan DNA, which is a cousin of the Neanderthal. And Neanderthals were known to interbreed with these Denisovans, which passed down this Neanderthal DNA to East Asians and Australians. Now let's talk about Africa. There is a lot of ghost DNA in the people in Africa, and you can look up plenty of articles on this. And what they mean by ghost is an unknown archaic human. And it looks like there was at least 3 different archaic humans in Africa when humans interbred with them. One in the west, one in the east, and one in the south. These are the facial reconstructions of the known hominids found in those areas. And when they say there is more genetic diversity in Africa than anywhere in the world, this is what they mean. In the next video, I will look into stories of our ancient past to see if there's any evidence of us coming into contact with these Neanderthals. And just from a preliminary search, I can say that yes, there's plenty of stories of us meeting these Neanderthals and other archaic humans. I want to thank everyone for watching this. Any questions, please leave it below in the comment section. Please like and subscribe if you can. And yeah, I'll try to get better. This is my first video. I'll try to get better as I go. Thank everyone.